Joe Petruzzi. Joe, we're here to discuss the question, how do you actually use data to improve and increase your team's performance?
That's a huge question, Jack. But I can give it into two prongs, I would say, that are the most important, if you will. I think there's probably 3 or 4 directions you can go there, but let's define first like the data, like what kind of data do we have for most, like let's say, sales managers. A lot of them are going to have prospecting data. It's going to be activity data. So like numbers like emails, calls, these are things we're usually, I would say, familiar with in a sales development setting, even accounting executives. And usually it comes in a raw format. So you might have like graphs and charts, and it's a little bit scattered. But a lot of times managers, I would say, don't utilize the right metrics. So they might say, oh, I have, this many emails were sent today by my team, or we made this many calls last month, but they have no idea what the efficiency of the team is. So they end up saying like, to their boss, hey, we made 10,000 calls last month. We booked, 90 meetings, let's say, and this is how much revenue was generated from the accepted leads, and it's good. But is that good objectively? Like, is it a good conversion rate? And so my first thing would be really focusing on conversion rates first and foremost when you're looking, or even if you're setting up a dashboard yourself, getting your metrics in place. They're the most important. In fact, I'd actually argue like most coaching opportunities are really on conversion rates, not on activity. If I have, like if, let's say, for example, we're doing calls, a cold calling sales development representative, they might have calls made, call connects, connections that turn into meetings and meetings that are accepted. So a lot of managers might say, oh, like if they made 100 calls, per day for the last week, so the activities are good. They only had 2 or 3 connects, so look at the number of connects, and they'll get the number of meetings, 1 meeting. And if you just look at conversion rates instead, you would just say, oh, his connect rate is low. So first of all, let's dive into that. But from the connects, the 1 meeting booked out of, let's say, a couple connects, whatever, it's actually a very high conversion rate. They're very good on the phone when something happens. They just can't get a connection. So what's the problem? And then if you look into it, you find out that it's either it could be an operational thing. They just like lead data, or it could be like you're not using a provider to help you with that, right? The leads just suck. That's one thing. Or 2, there's something else going on, from the rep, maybe like the way what the activity they're doing. Are they doing something wrong with their software, whatever it is, like that. But just by diving into that conversion rate, I can fix that. And instead of me looking at like all the individual activities, I have a base point of like, hey, we're supposed to get a 5% connect rate. We're at 1%. I know we can get to 5 pretty easy. Let's figure out the gap. So that's the first thing. Any questions there, Jack, before I go to the second thing? I don't want to preach too much here.
No, I'm one of those managers that's guilty of, hey, we did this many activities, but until you're able to break it down into conversion rates and really like ratios, you don't know what that activity really means. So I'm in full agreement.
Yeah. No, 100%. And then leading into that, then you have this, okay, cool, I have my conversion rates. Are they all the same though? And they're usually not. And this is something I think if I had to pick one thing I can change, that's a good concept to have in your mind. If I could pick one thing to change or improve, which one would I pick? And it forces you, like a metric, and it forces you to figure out what's the highest priority. That's either probably the easiest to accomplish and would have the biggest leverage. So like an example, let's say you have a SDR team, maybe they're doing a bunch of metrics, and show rate and booking rate are one of those metrics, and they're both low. Now for me, I'm not saying this is true for everyone. I'm going to give you an example here. For me, maybe with my SDR team, our meeting booking rate might be hard to go up and down. It might be like, hey man, we have the same messaging, we have the same market, we know it's just a 2% booking rate for logistics, let's just say, right? Very hard to up and down. But my show rate, I find out that, hey, like, in general, we've actually had some pretty good swings historically of show rate. We can get it up 10, 15% just by adding a follow-up sequence or by following up the day before. And our reps aren't currently doing that. So for me, I know if my show rate goes up 10, 15% and how many meetings we're booking and what our deal size is, I'm probably going to catch up to quota quite a bit quicker by just getting that up 10% and focusing on nothing else but the show rate. Versus if I'm trying to like get our, the amount of activity up, and I'm trying to get our email reply rate better, it's fine. But if I changed it 5 or 10%, does that have the same weight as if I change my show rate 10%? And once I know what the highest lever kind of conversion, improvement is, if I just go in on that for this week's one-on-one or for the next month, whatever it is, I have a lot more confidence that is going to get us to quota if I'm behind much faster than the other ones.
That's so good. It's so good. And as a coach, as a manager, you know something can always be better. So you're always going to be pursuing some coaching focus, some priority. But do you actually know that that should be the priority? And I think that's what you're touching on, where if you can turn numbers into conversion rates, then you can actually see the real data and how it lines up and averages, and then pick something you know is going to make an impact. So, Joe,
Exactly,
really
man.
appreciate you being on here, sharing your wisdom with us from the trenches. Thank you. And join us next time on the Blitz, y'all.
Yeah, man.
Thanks.
Loved it. Thanks, Jack.